Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we will talk about anatomy of pons. Pons is a part of brainstem. Brainstem has three parts: midbrain, pons, and medulla. Here in green color you can see the brainstem. This uppermost part is midbrain, then this is pons and medulla. Pons actually act as a bridge that connect the right and left cerebellar hemispheres. It lies anterior to the cerebellum, below the midbrain, and superior to the medulla. Now we will discuss external features of pons, and then we will discuss some internal features of pons. To discuss the external features of pons, we will discuss it as anterior aspect of pons and then posterior aspect of pons. First of all, the anterior. This is the anterior aspect of pons. It has convex surface with a groove in the middle of it, which is called basilar groove for the basilar artery. This anterior surface, it ends laterally as middle cerebellar peduncles. Again, this is the anterior aspect. This is basilar groove and the transversely running fibers here. And on the anterior surface, there is emergence of fifth cranial nerve, which is called trigeminal nerve. The trigeminal nerve, it has got two roots. This small medial root is actually motor root, and this large lateral one is the sensory root of trigeminal nerve. Then between the sulcus, between pons and medulla, this is inferior pontine sulcus. Here is the emergence of three nerves. This is abducent nerve, that is sixth cranial nerve, and then the facial nerve, it's motor root, the larger motor root. In contrast to the trigeminal nerve, facial nerve has large motor root and a smaller sensory root. So sixth cranial nerve, seventh cranial nerve, and eighth cranial nerve. Between the pons and medulla, there is emergence of sixth, seventh, and eighth cranial nerve. And on the anterior aspect, there is emergence of this fifth cranial nerve, which is also called trigeminal nerve. Now the posterior aspect of pons. The posterior aspect of pons is actually hidden by the cerebellum, so we can just see this after removing cerebellum or retracting it. It is triangular in shape, and it forms the part of floor of fourth ventricle. It is limited superiorly by superior cerebellar peduncles. On this posterior aspect, in the midline, there is median sulcus. On either side of a median sulcus, there is a longitudinal swelling which is called medial eminence. The lower part of this medial eminence is expanded to form facial colliculus. This facial colliculus is actually formed due to winding of facial nerve fibers around the abducent nerve nucleus. And just lateral to this medial eminence, there is a sulcus which is called sulcus limigens. Upper part of the floor of the sulcus limigens, there is a bluish gray area which is called substantia ferruginea. This is due to pigmented nerve cell bodies. And just lateral to this sulcus limigens, this area, this is called area vestibuli or vestibular area. Before proceeding towards the internal structure of pons, we will just understand few terminologies or structures which we will discuss in the internal structure of pons. First of all, cerebellar peduncles. Peduncle means a stem, a cord which connects to organs. So cerebellar peduncles are three in number. These are inferior cerebellar peduncle, which connects medulla to the cerebellum. Then the middle cerebellar peduncle, which connects pons to the cerebellum. And then the superior cerebellar peduncle, which connects midbrain to the cerebellum. So they are superior, inferior, and inferior cerebellar peduncles. These three peduncles connect the brain stem to the cerebellum. The next is stria medullaris. Stria medullaris is actually the fibers of arcuate nuclei. In the medullary cross section, we have seen this just anterior to this pyramid, there is arcuate nucleus. So these are the fibers which emerge from the arcuate nucleus, and here in the posterior aspect of pons, in fact this is a margin between medulla and pons. Here they emerge from the median sulcus and go laterally and then enter the inferior cerebellar peduncle, and from inferior cerebellar peduncle they enter the cerebellum. We have three lemnisci here: the medial, lateral, and spinal lemniscus. First of all, the medial lemniscus. In the cross sections of medulla, we have read about these fibers. These are the tracts from spinal cord, from the fasciculus gracile and fasciculus cuneatus. They ascend, and in the medulla, in the gracile nucleus and cuneate nucleus, they relay, and the fibers, the second order neurons, they just cross in, and then they ascend to reach the thalamus. These fibers, this collection of fiber is called medial lemniscus, and they mediate the proprioception, 2-point discrimination, and vibration sensations. So this is the sensory decussation, and after decussation these fibers they ascend to reach the thalamus. These fibers, this collection of fibers is called medial lemniscus. Then the spinal lemniscus. The spinal lemniscus is actually a collection of lateral and anterior spinothalamic tract and sometimes spinotactile tract. So it's a collection of lateral, anterior spinothalamic and spinotactile tract. When they ascend to reach the thalamus, here the fiber collection of these fiber is sensory fibers is called spinal lemniscus. They are concerned with thermal sensations and crude touch sensations. Then we have lateral lemniscus. The lateral lemniscus, these are actually axons that carry information of sound from the cochlear nuclei, and they are connected to the other nuclei in the brainstem, for example the superior olivary complex, and at the end they reach the inferior colliculus of opposite side. See here, you can see the crossing fibers, and they reach the opposite side of inferior colliculus in the midbrain. Then what is reticular formation? Reticular formation is a set of interconnected nuclei. They are located throughout the brain stem, and they are present in different parts of the brain. They are involved in motor coordination. So these are actually a lot of nuclei which are interconnected throughout the brain and brainstem. They are concerned with motor coordination. Now the medial longitudinal fasciculus. Medial longitudinal fasciculus, it lies beneath the floor of fourth ventricle on either side of midline. It is the pathway that actually connects the vestibulocochlear nerve to the nuclei of the third, fourth, and sixth cranial nerve, which actually supply the extraocular muscles. These here you can see the nuclei of vestibulocochlear nerve, and this is the nucleus of sixth cranial nerve, fourth and third cranial nerve. So this is medial longitudinal fasciculus, which is present on either side of midline in the floor or beneath the floor of fourth ventricle. It connects this vestibular cochlear nerve to the nuclei of nerves which supply the extraocular muscles. Now the internal structure of Pons. For our convenience, we just divide the internal structure cross section into two parts. The posterior part of Pons, which is called tegmentum, and anterior part, which is called basilar part. We will discuss the transverse sections, two transverse sections of Pons. The caudal one, which passes through the facial colliculus. Here, the inferior end, which is expanded of median eminence, this is called facial colliculus, at this level. This caudal section is at this level, at the level of facial colliculus. First, we will discuss the tegmentum and then the basilar part. In the tegmentum, first of all, this is medial lemniscus. Medial lemniscus was the sensory decussulating fibers from gracile and cuneate nucleus that ascend to the thalamus. These fibers, they just rotate when they enter the pons and they become transverse. Just posterior to this, there is nucleus of abducent nerve and facial nerve. And this facial nerve fibers, they just wind around this abducent nerve to form a swelling which is called facial colliculus. So this facial colliculus or this swelling is due to the winding of these fibers of facial nerve around the abducent nerve nucleus. And then they are vestibular nuclei. There are four vestibular nuclei, superior, inferior, medial and lateral vestibular nuclei. And then just posterior to it and in a close proximity to the vestibular nuclei, there is present inferior cerebellar peduncle. And here you can see the spinal nucleus of fifth cranial nerve with its tract here. In the midline along this median sulcus, this is medial longitudinal fasciculus. Medial longitudinal fasciculus, these are the fibers which connect the eighth cranial nerve to the cranial nerves which supply the extraocular muscles. Then the basilar and then the trapezoid body, it is formed by trapezoid body nuclei and its fibers and the fibers from cochlear nuclei. These fibers, they runs transversely. See, they runs transversely. This is called trapezoid body. Then we have basilar part. In the basilar part of the pons, there are small masses of nerve cells. These are called pontine nuclei. The corticopontine fibers of crus cerebri of midbrain, they terminate in the pontine nuclei, and from here they enter the cerebellum through middle cerebellar peduncle. So these are actually pontocerebellar fibers. These fibers are the biggest connection between cortex, cerebrum and cerebellum. Cortico-pontocerebellar fibers. They are the biggest connection between cerebrum and cerebellum. These first they are vertical fibers which descend, and in the pontine, after laying in the pontine nuclei, they are transverse fibers which reach the cerebellum through middle cerebellar peduncle. I have told you middle cerebellar peduncle which connects pons to the cerebellum. Next we have transverse section through the trigeminal nuclei. When we were talking about the anterior aspect of the pons, we said there is emergence of fifth cranial nerve, which is trigeminal nerve. So we take this section, this transverse section at this level. At this level, it is somewhat similar to the caudal section, except there is motor nucleus of trigeminal nerve. motor nucleus of trigeminal nerve. The fibers then they pass through the substance of pons and emerge on the anterior surface. Similarly, the sensory nucleus, their fibers, they enter the pons and passing through the substance, it lies lateral to the motor nucleus. This is the principal sensory nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Next, we have superior cerebellar peduncle, which lies supralateral to the here it lies supralateral to the motor nucleus of trigeminal nerve. Here, this is superior cerebellar peduncle, and all other things are same. This is medial longitudinal fasciculus, this is trapezoid body, medial lemniscus, this is spinal lemniscus, and there is also present lateral lemniscus. The basilar area is same. And this is the reticular formation here, the reticular formation which is formed due to interconnection of different nuclei. These are the fibers that interconnect different nuclei, and it has not any boundary, because they are widely spread in the brain stem and in the brain. This is the comparison of different two levels. The cavity in both the cross sections, it's a fourth ventricle. First we take at the facial colliculus level, and secondly at the trigeminal nuclei. These are the nuclei which are present in these level. We have discussed it. And then these are the motor tracts which are present. Motor tracts are almost, they are the same. And corticospinal tract, corticonuclear tracts. These corticospinal and corticonuclear tracts, they are intersected by the horizontal fibers in the basilar part of the pons. When they go to the when corticopontocerebellar fibers, the transverse fibers which run from basilar part of the pons through the middle cerebellar peduncle to the cerebellum, these fibers, they intersect the corticospinal and corticonuclear fibers, and they divide it into small groups. Then these are the sensory tract, all the lemnisci, the lateral lemniscus, which is lateral lemniscus, the spinal lemniscus, and medial lemniscus. We have discussed in these lemnisci. Then the clinical significance of Pons. There may be a tumor of Pons, pontine hemorrhage, and infarction of Pons. First of all, tumor of Pons. The most common tumor is astrocytoma of Pons in childhood. The tumors of Pons, they involve ipsilateral cranial nerve. Ipsilateral means same side. They involve the cranial nerves of same side, and there is contralateral hemiparesis due to the involvement of corticospinal tracts. Due to the involvement of corticospinal tracts, which are the motor tracts, they depreciate in the medulla. That's why there is contralateral hemiparesis. And ipsilateral cranial nerve paralysis because of the cranial nerve nuclei which are present in the pons. They, due to facial nerve, there may be facial nerve palsy. Due to trigeminal nerve, loss of sensations on the face, but loss of there's no loss of pain sensation because of the sparing of spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve, which is present in the medulla. And then abducent nerve, it will abducent nerve, which is supplying the extra ocular muscles, and the vestibulocochlear nerve. Due to cochlear component, there will be impairment of hearing, and due to vestibular component, there will be impairment of in the balance. Then we have read about pontocerebellar fibers. When these fibers are involved, then there may be cerebellar signs of cerebellar dysfunctions. We will discuss all these signs of cerebellar dysfunctions in the under the topic of cerebellum. Then the pontine hemorrhage. Pons is supplied by basilar artery and anterior, inferior, and superior cerebellar arteries. So a hemorrhage in any of these arteries, it results in the involvement of facial nerve, and due to that there is paralysis on the same side, same side, and due to involvement of corticospinal tract, there is paralysis of limbs on the opposite side. There may be pinpoint pupil due to ocular sympathetic fibers. There may be there is a sign of pinpoint pupil with the person in the person with pontine hemorrhage. Then the infarction of Pons, thrombosis or embolism of basilar artery may occur, and it will also involve corticospinal fibers and corticopontocerebellar fibers, and the symptoms will develop will be dependent of which part of the pons is involved. Is it central part or it is peripheral part? And that's it. Thank you so much.